Hey everybody, it's Trags, and it's Wednesday, December 5th, and it's time for episode 274 of Patriots Beat on the CLNS Media Network. Find us at clnsmedia.com, and of course, follow us on Twitter at PatriotsCLNS. So much has been written and said about the Patriots dynasty and its sublime and sometimes ridiculous relationship with the other 31 NFL teams. But I welcome today someone who has written a book that takes us inside the last 5 years of not only the Patriots, but the NFL better than anybody else. It's a thrill to welcome Mark Leibovich, author of Big Game, the NFL in Dangerous Times. Mark is a chief national correspondent for the New York Times Magazine. He is also the recipient of the National Magazine Award for Profile Writing. Welcome, Mark.
Trags, good to be with you.
It is.
Sorry it took so long. It took so long. It took until episode number 274. I was hoping to get on sooner.
Better late than never. So I have to ask this. I'm curious, every time a book is written, why the title and why so dangerous?
Wait, so you ask every time. Okay, so basically, why the title? Short answer, that's what the publisher wanted. It was his idea. No, I mean, I figured, it sounded catchy. It sounded kind of punchy. And as far as the subtitle, the NFL in Dangerous Times, I mean, I thought, that was my invention. Basically, I capture the league at a moment when it seemed to be just mixing just unprecedented popularity and profitability, but also it just seems so precarious at the same time. I mean, they are always dealing with some crisis, many times self-inflicted crisis or self-exacerbating crisis. And and yet the league just keeps humming right along, and I don't think there's anything people care more about than the fortunes of their own teams. So, that's sort of where the league is today, but I think that, as we've seen with a number of events over the years, there's any number of things that can really upset the apple cart, and we'll see where we are in 20 years.
Background on you, Mark. You are a lifelong Patriots fan.
I am.
Relatively private Patriots fan, I guess, early on in your life. Is that accurate?
Not in my life. I mean, I lived in New England, so people knew. I was a Pats fan like everyone up there. I grew up in Newton, Mass, and I was, but then I lived in Boston in my early 20s, but since, I guess, 1994, I haven't lived there, but I've always been fairly proud about it. I think there's some resentment around the country for the Pats, largely because of, I think, the team's success, and some of it's just sports fans trolling each other. But I'm not one of these. I don't want to be like an arrogant. I want to be good for the brand. I want to show the flag with grace and respect. And besides, we're awesome. We win every year. So.
I say the relatively private part because, the press release says you kept your passion as a lifelong Patriots fan relatively private. I always wonder,
right.
When the publisher is trying to do its fair share and kind of prop it up a little bit. And I read that and I'm like, really? Because like you said, being a Patriots fan is hardly a private endeavor.
No, it isn't. Although it is tough living outside of town sometimes, especially when you live in a city that has a long-suffering NFL team. And I live in Washington now, so look, I think a lot of fans are just sort of sick of hearing from us. But I think, I would I keep it quiet in that. Look, it's not my day job. I'm not a sports writer, and it's not my job to, or at least until the last several months, it hasn't been my job to talk about sports in any public context. But so this is now part of my identity, kind of like I don't know. I guess being bald, being any number of things that you can sort of like snap onto my identity. That's part of it now. But I wear it proud when I can.
So, you mentioned that this isn't your day job. Your day job is covering, Washington
politics.
Right.
Yep.
And it's fascinating to me how the two, and you mentioned this in the book, obviously, how the two are married together to a large extent.
Yeah, that wasn't the plan. The original plan was just to take a break from politics for a while and focus on, a whole other reality show, which would be the NFL. And it became pretty clear pretty early on that there was no escape from politics anywhere, especially given Donald Trump's belly flop into the pool, and then his longstanding interest in football and his jumping into the national anthem controversy and so forth. So I think a good portion of the narrative of the book was to just all distractions around politics, mostly last year, but I think it's sort of with us for a while.
And, I spoke to a couple of other people who have written books, and they both mentioned, obviously, Donald Trump and the impact he has had on the most important, most powerful league in arguably the world, athletic league in the world. And you also mentioned it. And, it's hard to imagine him not being somewhat forlorn, jealous, whatever, of not being able to get into the membership, as you mentioned, and the membership, of course, of the 32 NFL teams.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He does not come to this, without a personal axe to grind. He's been trying to buy any number of NFL teams, including the Patriots in the 80s and the 90s, for the better part of 4 decades. And most of the other NFL owners and the league office has wanted nothing to do with him as a business partner. And a lot of them know him. He sort of has been in the rounds of high-profile businessman circles for many, many years. He's been part of the furniture, and he shows up at games, and he's a celebrity. So, there's going to be some natural exposure. But, and I also think that a lot of owners are Republicans, and a lot of rich owners gave him a lot of money, and including several of the owners right now. So, having said that, though, no, I think there's some personal resentment involved in him not being allowed to have a team, and that's one of Ben's lifelong dreams. And like many other endeavors in his life, the big boys, people that he perceived as the big boys, didn't give him the time of day. And it's sort of ironic that the ultimate consolation prize for him would be, we'll let him be president of the United States instead. So now he gets to troll from the sidelines. You
read Jeff Pearlman's book?
I haven't, but I hear it's excellent.
Yeah, I spoke to Jeff on one of these podcasts, as a matter of fact, about a month ago, and he delves into it, with even more rigor and detail, just specifically on how he impacted the USFL. Which I don't know if you heard, but Jeff is the biggest USFL fan I have ever met in my life.
I know, right? Things have been a little slow lately, right? For the last maybe 33 years or something. But I heard it's a really good book, and I've run into Jeff a couple times. He seems like a really good guy, and I like his writing, so I'm definitely planning on picking it up.
Okay, let's get to Tom Brady. Let's. Tom Brady got back to you in the summer of 2014 after a couple of more than a couple of tries of getting a hold of him.
Yeah. It was mostly through Don Yee, his agent, and Don and I would talk maybe once or twice a year, and I would just sort of throw out there that I have this side hobby, which is football, and I'd like to write a football piece for the Times Magazine, which is where I work, and he said that Tom likes to occasionally step outside the football comfort zone and sort of talk to people who don't really normally operate in his world. So, after a couple of years, and obviously, we all had day jobs. It's not like we were all waiting by the phone, but Don said, "Hey, you want to come meet him?" And our brief but sort of fascinating friendship sort of took light from there. And so I basically talked to him on and off for much of the 2014-15 season, and kept in touch a little bit with him, and also certainly his family and a lot of his friends over the years. So Tom was like my original jump off point into football, and a year later I did a similar story on Roger Goodell, although I didn't never rooted for Roger Goodell and didn't really have the same urge or desire to talk to him, but it sort of worked out that way. But that gave me an entree into the league itself, into Park Avenue, and a lot of the owners who I got to know. So, like a lot of books, it started out as 2 big magazine pieces, and it kind of my interest. And then I decided that there was enough for a book, and I wanted to sort of keep digging, and this is the result. So, but Tom was the jumping off point.
That's what I kind of figured. And Got to ask you what it was like inside the TB12 lair.
Well, I was in a couple of them. The one in New York,
Brookline.
and then one in Brookline. Yeah, they're basically really nice rich guy houses. I mean, the Brookline one was, when I was there, it was like probably about 95% done. There was still some construction going on around the edges a little bit, but yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, very well lit. I mean, anyone who saw the Tom versus Time documentary,
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot of inside shots of the house. I mean, that's what it looked like. And Tom is just like a really well dressed guy puttering around the house a lot, and that's where we talked.
Did you get a sense from him that he still has a passion for the game? Because it's one thing, look, and I'm sure you know where I'm going with this, Mark. It's one thing to hear him talk publicly about he'd love to play till he's 45. He's never felt better. He's never felt this great this late in the season, and he said that many, many times. He's felt stronger as he has gotten older. But do you get a sense from him that the passion still burns? Because I think some people watched Tom versus Time last year toward the end and really wondered if it was there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point. I mean, first of all, I think last year was an unusually tough year for him, and we'll see how this one ends up. But I mean, I think between the Garoppolo trade and that ESPN story, that sort of laid out a lot of the friction between Belichick and Kraft and Brady and Alex Guerrero. I mean, and that story rang very, very true to me, and a lot of my own independent reporting certainly underscored that. And so, I think last year was a pretty unusually tough year. They lost in the Super Bowl in a pretty tough fashion. So I think that I don't think that's an outlier, though. I mean, I think, look, one thing I learned about Tom, and I think I lay this out in the book pretty well, is he knows 100% fully what's going on. I mean, he is not as certainly innocent and certainly not as, let's just say, non-ruffling of feathers as he is in public. I mean, this guy, he's a very good businessman. He knows himself really well. He knows the players really well. I mean, players like Robert Kraft, Jonathan Kraft, Bill Belichick, Roger Goodell. I mean, he knows, he has a full appreciation for the absurdity of the world that he operates in as a famous sports star. And that relates to the league he plays in, the team he plays in, the market he plays in, and just sort of the weird celebrity fame world he operates in. So, look, I would take what he's saying now about wanting to play till he's 45 at some face value, but I also think that he's fully aware that there are a lot of variables, including health, including family, and he also reserves the right to change his mind. So, I mean, he certainly looked somewhat on the fence on a few occasions during the last off season.
What is he more likely to be? A CEO of TB12 and founder of it, or President of the United States or a U.S. Senator?
I would say definitely the former. I would say almost definitely. I mean, I think the latter is pretty much impossible at this point. I mean, the problem is he'd have to run for that. I don't think he'd want to run for it. No, I mean, I think he was very intrigued by politics for a while. I mean, he's talked about, in fact, just the other day after George Bush 41 on WEEI, he talked about this, talked about playing golf with Bill Clinton and George Bush 41 up in Kennebunkport in like 2006, I think it was. And I remember when I was in his house in Brookline, he didn't have a lot of books on his shelf, and it might be just because he was still moving in, but two of the books he had were Bill Clinton's autobiography and George Bush 41's book of letters. So, and there was like three other books. So that was, I mean, those were two. But I also think, I remember Trump, I happened to write about then candidate Trump right after I wrote about Brady, and Trump kept saying, you got to call my friend Tom Brady, you got to call him. And so finally I emailed Tom because, Trump wouldn't stop, urging me to like, get a quote from Tom Brady. Right. I said, look, I know you don't want to play here, but like, I assume you don't want to play, but like Trump keeps saying I should try to get a quote from you. What say you? And he said something like, I've learned plenty about politics in the last 8 or 9 months, so I think I'm gonna stand down on this one. And politics in that context was, I think, Deflategate, because he was talking about league politics, but then he got kind of a rude awakening on how toxic actual politics can be in the next couple of years when he's immediately been linked to Donald Trump, and that brings with it a whole lot of baggage.
So I was in the locker room, and I was there when that MAGA, Make America Great Again, red hat was in his locker, and I noticed it, and I'm like,
the original incident.
The original incident, and I remember to myself rolling my eyes and going, "Oh God, does he not?" Because what struck me about that, Mark, was the fact that he is the most self-aware person I have ever met in sports, by far. Yeah. And you could see what was coming, and I'm just surprised that he would let that hat.
He would let it happen, yeah.
He would let it happen, right?
Yeah, no, that is like a bit of a blind spot. I mean, I think he is self-aware, but I also think that, and he told me this once, I mean, he has a naive strain about him. He said this, and I think he said this to me right before Deflategate happened. He said, and I think I quote this in the book, he said, Kraft is always telling him that he's naive. Robert is always telling him that he's naive. There's like a strain about him that trusts people too easily. And I don't know. It will certainly Deflategate probably knock some of that right out of him. But I do think that this is a topic that was so alien to him that he just probably didn't see it through or didn't think it through, and it's like, oh, it's just a hat, and I'm focused on improving my agility in the pocket by like 8 billionths of a tenth of a second, or something like that. So, yeah, I mean, but you could sort of see how these things are going to like get blown out of proportion almost immediately.
Okay, Deflategate, I will tell you, was the most ridiculous story I've covered in my quarter century covering Boston sports. And
no doubt,
it was really an indication to me, Mark, how badly the other 31 teams wanted to make Bob Kraft, Bill Belichick, and Brady himself suffer. Maybe that's really simplifying it, but to me that's what it was all about. Because full well that story would have ended had the NFL come down with $1 million fine, taken 2 draft picks, and called it a day. But that's not. That wasn't their intent.
No, I mean, it was nonsense on a lot of levels. But I wouldn't. I mean, yes, you can say the other 31 teams wanted this to happen, and they did. But I mean, don't absolve the executioner here, which is the league. I mean, Roger Goodell works for them, and he's always saying, hey, I work for everyone. I work for the fans. I work for the players. I work for the owners. But I work for the good of the game. But no, I mean, I think that's sort of where that all started, and I think it was ridiculous. I think it was selective enforcement, and I'm obviously preaching to the converted here. But I think when you put it in light of just his complete inability to deal with, say, like the domestic violence problem, the idea that like they can just sort of let TMZ make one phone call or whatever they did, and maybe write a small check and get their Ray Rice elevator video or the Kareem Hunt hallway video, and they can't lift a finger to do that, and yet they can lift they can spend tens of millions of dollars to try to see if a minuscule amount of air pressure might have been removed from a football and someone was generally aware, or whatever BS they threw out there. So no, I mean, it's complete and utter nonsense. But if you think about it, and I don't know if they're this calculated to think this through, but it's a reality show, and this story dominated a couple of off seasons, and everyone loves to knock down the bully, and the Patriots make a pretty appealing villain if you're trying to get eyeballs around the league. So unfortunately, Tom's reputation, I think, very unfairly had to suffer, and I think the teams did, and look, we won the Super Bowl the next year. So, but yeah, I think that was definitely an eye-opener into how the league works and how cynical they can be.
Speaking with Mark Leibovich, outstanding New York Times writer and author of Big Game, the NFL in Dangerous Times. Hey, everybody, I want to tell you about the future of journalism. If you haven't seen it by now, here's your chance to join a sports revolution. It's called The Athletic. Go to theathletic.com/PatsBeat, all lowercase, and sign up now for 40% off. That's theathletic.com/PatsBeat, all lowercase, for your first subscription to The Athletic for less than $3 a month. I was reading Jeff Howe's terrific film breakdown of the Sunday win over the Minnesota Vikings, and there's Matt Chatham's great weekly insight to the X's and O's. This is information and analysis you can't get anywhere else. The Athletic is a subscription-based publisher of smarter sports coverage for diehard fans. The model is simple: no ads, no pop-ups, no autoplay videos. Readers subscribe for authentic, in-depth coverage written by journalists who know their teams inside and out. Again, go to theathletic.com/PatsBeat, all lowercase. Again, that's theathletic.com/PatsBeat for 40% off. Subscribe now and be part of the future of sports journalism. Speaking again with Mark Leibovich, author of a must-read book for any NFL or Patriots fan, Big Game, the NFL in Dangerous Times. Before we get to Robert Kraft, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Kareem Hunt and Reuben Foster. I know you mentioned it right before the break there. Two ugly, ugly storylines. Do you think either will see the light of day again, either player in the NFL?
Well, let's see. As we were on break here, I was just reading Twitter because that's what
we all do.
That's what we do. I just lost it. Anyway, Jerry Jones said today on some Dallas radio station that he was watching this very, very closely. Of course, I read this to mean, hey, does Dallas need like a backup to Zeke Elliott? I don't know. It wouldn't shock me if Hunt got another shot. One, because he's much younger than Ray Rice.
23 compared to 28.
Yeah, he was probably late 20s. Yeah, something like that. I mean, he obviously has a lot less wear and tear. He's also probably a better player. I mean, who knows? Look, it's a mess. It wouldn't shock me at all if a team signed him. And look, I mean, the Redskins signed Reuben Foster last week, and he arguably, I mean, he's had more. I mean, he's a pretty bad apple. He's not as probably good a player as Kareem Hunt. So it's a mess, and it certainly wouldn't shock me.
Okay, let me ask you a better question. That is, are you surprised that given the climate in the NFL against domestic violence, that these stories keep cropping up in this day and age after all of the attention the last 4 to 5 years on it?
I'm not surprised that they because, I mean, look, you have a population of players, and I think they're probably less likely to commit the acts of domestic violence in the population at large. I mean, the league will tell you that, but these are very high-profile people, and the league has a real knack for screwing these things up. And, because there is video out there and because there's a TMZ out there, the league effectively has competition for shedding light on these things. And when it's not the league that sheds light on these things, they look really, really bad. So, I mean, it's a weird situation they find themselves in. But no, I mean, I think that there's any number of media entities that would love to do the NFL's, very, very shoddy work for them when it comes to bringing these things to light. And I think, TMZ, has done a great job. I mean, in a weird way, just like gathering awareness and doing things that the NFL hasn't been able to do. So, yeah, so I'm not surprised, and I'm sure there'll be another one. And I also think that they'll screw it up at the league again.
Okay. I want you to characterize Robert Kraft for me.
Okay. Robert Kraft.
It's an open-ended question intentionally.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of different ways I think you could go with this, and some ways that I read in the book that are not positive at all, and there are other ways that make him, seem like, a savior and a genius in New England.
Yeah, I don't think he's a savior. I don't think he's a genius, and I don't think he's a bad guy either. I mean, I think, like a lot of people, it's complicated. I mean, I had the chance to spend a fair amount of time with him. I liked him. He's very familiar to me. I also, as a fan of the team, I'm grateful for, him saving the team from moving in the early 90s or mid-90s, whenever it was, and hiring Bill Belichick and doing all the things that, have made fans of the team happy over the last 2 decades. So, in that sense, I'm grateful. I mean, he's a politician. I think he's a very aggressive businessman. I think he is extremely, I think the characterization of him is needy is accurate. I mean, I think he, probably compared to certainly Brady and Belichick, cares more about getting credit and getting sort of attention for what he has done than the others. But I think, look, I find him, and someone who deals with politicians for a living, I find him fairly transparent in his, and in how he deals with people. And look, I enjoy talking to him, and partly, I think, we had a familiarity with each other just because I'm local and I root for his team and so forth. And he's a pretty easy guy to talk to. But I don't think he's particularly well loved around the league. I think he's respected, but I think that there is a fair amount of resentment for him, and it's not all because of his success on the field. I think people see him as a very political guy, and I think, as he would say, jealousy is a very, very powerful force in this league and in this world, and I think he's probably been a victim of some of that too.
Needy Bob Kraft, as you and Dan Shaughnessy make mention.
That's Shaughnessy's thing. Yeah, I think it's accurate. I mean, I think he is needy. I mean, look, I don't think it's something to be ashamed of. I think a lot of people are needy, especially in public, or in public positions. But yeah, I mean, I would say that's an accurate descriptor.
Okay, go back to Roger Goodell for a moment here, Mark. Talking with Mark Leibovich, outstanding author of The Big Game, The NFL in Dangerous Times. We've heard all the negatives about Roger Goodell, but I want you to give me 3 reasons that make him an effective commissioner beyond being a simple yes man for the membership.
3?
Yeah, if you can. You know what? Just give me a couple of reasons right off the top of your head. 3 might take some thinking.
All right, let me give you 3. He makes money for the owners. That's 1. He makes money for the owners. That's 2. And he makes money for the owners. That's 3. No, but I would say that those are the top 1 through 10. But I guess let's see. I mean, he is. I guess he kind of knows the game. I mean, he played in high school. He's been around. He's fun to talk football with. I mean, I talked to him a couple times, and he clearly, obviously, knows the game really deeply and can talk to a pretty knowledgeable fan like myself. So that's I guess speaks well of him. I guess number 3 would be so if making money is 1 and that's 2, number 3 would be. Look, I mean, he knows how politicians operate. I mean, he's the son of a Republican senator from New York, Charles Goodell. He is very, very cautious. He knows how to, shake hands. He knows how to slap backs. And that's a really, really important part of the job when you're dealing with 32, largely, wealthy and all wealthy and also often very needy and very, very sort of, I would say, calculating bosses, and those are the NFL owners. So, yeah, I mean, so politician, knows the game, and makes money.
So tell me what it was like on Jerry Jones's bus. And for those wondering what I'm talking about, buy the book.
Yeah, buy the book. It's not a pretty sight. No, look, I interviewed Jerry Jones on the Dallas Cowboys bus in, I guess it was May of 2017, and not for the faint of heart or liver is that thing. So after about an hour, he said, "You want a shot of scotch?" And it was like 1:00 in the afternoon, and I was like, "Sure." I don't want to be an ungracious guest. So by shot, he meant a 24-ounce, Dallas Cowboys souvenir plastic cup filled with ice and filled with Johnny Walker Blue, which is, probably goes about $300 a bottle, and he's got a whole case stocked with them on the bus, and they were refilled, a few times over the course of what became a very, very sloppy few hours, like 4 or 5 hours, and I don't remember much about it except that according to the tape recorder, it was quite revealing, and that was working really well. So, yeah, you'll have to. Yeah, it's more fully rendered in I think chapter. I think it's called This Man. The name of the chapter is This Man's Liver Belongs in Canton, and it's not referring to me. It's referring to Jerry. So.
That's tremendous.
Yeah, so the truths were revealed. Let's put it that way.
Okay,
uncomfortable one.
I've got to ask you this, and we'll wrap it up here. Speaking with Mark Leibovich, the outstanding and hilarious author of Big Game, The NFL in Dangerous Times. You are a political writer, and I've got to tell you, Mark, I've always thought the marriage of politics and sports was a disaster waiting to happen. And I get that sports in America has always had an element of social justice to it. but I think I speak for millions of Americans who just want sports the way it used to be. And I know, look, I'm 52, and I try to be hip. I've got 2 daughters, one in college, one in sophomore in high school. I try to be hip to today's culture, but I'm just burned out of preaching. And do you? This is a long-winded way of saying, do you ever get the sense that fans also are fed up with that?
Oh, yeah, I think so. I mean, the NFL has always marketed football as a means of escape, right? And escape your day-to-day problems, escape your work and so forth. But look, politics would probably be, 1 or 1A of the things that people don't want to have to think about when they're sitting down to watch a football game on Sunday. But, as we've learned, repeatedly, it's hard to escape. And look, I also would say, and a number of athletes I talk to, a lot of NFL players I talk to would say that, this is not a time that kind of lends itself to escape. And it's not just because of what Colin Kaepernick, does or doesn't do, or whether he's signed or isn't signed, or whatever Donald Trump says or doesn't say. I mean, I think, like it or not, these are very, very politically aware times. I think you kind of don't have a choice on the matter. And look, it's not. I think most people. The reason the NFL is getting record ratings again this year is because people love football. But I also think that, and I've said this before, but I can't say it enough. I think the game indoors is so popular because it is an amazing game, and it's just really, really fun to watch, and it just is a perfect TV sport. And I also think it's in spite of the people who run it. And look, I don't have a sense the people who run the NFL have any sense of the moment we're living in, both culturally and politically. And, that includes things like domestic violence and sort of all the racial issues that have been arisen around the Trump presidency. And look, I think that sports is still an escape. I just don't think it's as full an escape as it used to be.
Right, and I'm curious to get your sense, how many similarities you found writing this book and your previous terrific book, This Town, the story of politics inside the Washington Beltway. How similar was it?
There was pretty similar, much more so than I thought. I mean, I wanted to, like I said, I wanted to write about football to kind of escape the swamp that I normally operate in, and you realize pretty soon that, it's also a swamp. It's a lot of the sort of same usual suspects. It's kind of a small town in some ways. You get the royalty, and you got the generals and Park Avenue, and then you got the players and the gladiators and the fans. And so, you do sort of get a sense that we're all part of the same deal, and that includes the media too, by the way. The media, has a whole band of celebrities that could probably sign more autographs in the middle of an airport than most Hall of Fame, players or coaches at this point. So,
and provide golden nuggets.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, Adam Schefter is the king of nuggets.
Yes, he is.
That's chapter 3, I think. Anyway,
rereading that, but go ahead.
Oh, no. But so anyway, no, I think, look, it is it's a village in many ways. It's a small town. And, a lot of it, they're sort of male-dominated, money-dominated, ego-dominated worlds. And, the similarities were pretty apparent to me almost immediately.
How can people follow you on social media, and where do you want them to follow you on social media?
My Twitter is at Mark Leibovich, MarkLeibovich, and let's see. That's Twitter. I work for the New York Times. I write, for the magazine, so that's how you can read me and reach me.
Your book is outstanding.
Actually, not reach me, read me. Yeah.
There you go. I got you. Our listeners are smart, Mark. They can figure that out.
They can troll me along as everyone else. Yeah, get in line.
His book, Big Game, The NFL in Dangerous Times, is an absolute must-read. Football fan or just a fan of American spectacle in general. You like that description there?
Fantastic. Keep saying it.
I will.
No, I appreciate it, Trey. Thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. I want to thank everybody for downloading today's podcast. I want to thank our terrific guest, Mark Leibovich, outstanding New York Times writer and author of Big Game, The NFL in Dangerous Times. His book is a New York Times bestseller and available online through Penguin Press. Also want to, of course, thank our great sponsor, The Athletic, for producer Mike Alongi, our executive producer Tommy White, and the founder of the network, Nick Gelso. This is Mike Petralia, and this has been the Patriots Beat podcast powered by CLNS Media.
Hello, I'm Dan Lothian, host of the Behind the Media podcast on the CLNS Media Network. Along with Jimmy Young, we dive into the biggest media headlines each week with honest, informed, and sometimes irreverent perspectives. It's not all serious. We deliver information and entertainment. As we like to say on Behind the Media, we find the interesting in media so you don't have to go searching for it. Listen to our podcast and get prepped for the next trip to the water cooler. Subscribe to Behind the Media wherever you get your podcast, or find us on www.clnsmedia.com.